Welcome back, everyone. I am so excited for this episode today. I have Jenn Markiewicz on with me, and I previously met her in spring-ish timeframe 2023, and shortly thereafter, she joined my Brave Breathwork Program, and then later attended a BRAVE-cation Retreat, and she's here today to share more about her experience. So I'll turn it to you, Jenn. Is there anything else that you want to share about yourself and who you are?
Yeah, of course. So I am a mom of four. I have four beautiful children ranging in age from almost 19 to 11. And I'm a wife of 20 plus years, which is crazy because it feels like I blinked my eyes and here we are to the love of my life. We are true partners in life, and I love Disney and running and all kinds of other things. I've been on my anxiety journey since I was a little girl, and finding Dr. Steph has really been instrumental in a lot of the healing that I've done in the last year. And I'm really excited to chat about the BRAVE-cation and how that played into it.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so tell me more about why you decided to come to BRAVE-cation Healing Retreat.
Yeah, so when I started to follow you on Instagram, you would post little blips about it. But it was really when I wrapped up the Brave Breathwork Program and I was getting ready to transition into Brave Academy. I realized just in the 3 months that I'd spent in Brave Breathwork, I had made such significant strides forward in my anxiety journey, and I really just wanted to learn from you in whatever way that I could. So around that time, I started seeing more experiences and testimonials from people who had previously attended, and that really pushed me over the edge to sign up. In full transparency, I didn't really know what to expect,
Yeah.
but the thought of spending 4 days really focusing on my own healing with you as the guide felt like the next right step in that journey.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Okay, so maybe let's skip to that really quick. You're like, I didn't know what to expect. If somebody's listening and they've seen me post some testimonials, maybe you're the first or second podcast interview that they're listening to, and they're like, but what is it? Like, what would you tell them in your own words?
What is it? That's a great question. And since we've wrapped up the retreat, I think it's been a month now, I've spent the last month really trying to figure out how to verbalize what it is. And yes, there are, self-care pieces like, massages and getting all dolled up and going out to eat. And there's content that's presented, but what has really stood out for me in the last month is being able to look inside myself and do the healing that I intended to do at a much more rapid pace than maybe I could in talk therapy or even with Brave Academy or through the breathwork program.
Because it's a deep dive and all your attention is there for 4 days. Next year, it will be 5 days.
I know, so exciting.
Yes, yes. Okay. So you've said a little bit about this, but I'll ask this to see if there's anything else that comes up for you. What were you dealing with before coming to the retreat that you were like wanting to work on there?
Yeah, so with my anxiety, I mean, that's the main thing that I'm always working to heal from. But as you peel the layers back a little bit further, the anxiety for me has been driven by feelings of never being good enough, by, my body not looking a certain way, by fear of failing, um, always wanting to be what everybody else wanted me to be. And to do that, it required a lot of control over everything that I was doing day to day. And by managing that outcome, it allowed me to be what everyone wanted me to be. So the anxiety is like just scratching the surface of all the things that were kind of driving it for me.
Hmm. Absolutely. Okay. And were you nervous at all to come? I know some people say that they're nervous, and I don't remember if that was true for you.
I didn't feel nervous until it was time for me to pack up to actually go
Yeah.
to the retreat. Like, I was so excited. I had so much excitement, leading up to it, and meeting everyone through our Zoom conversation. But I noticed when it was time to pack up, like, I was really taking my time to pack the bag. And that's when, some of the anxiety or nervousness came up to, I was going to something that I didn't really know what to expect. I was going into something where I didn't really know anyone in person. Like, I talked to them through virtual messaging, but never actually met any of these women in person. And
Yeah.
I also had a lot of guilt for taking this time for myself away
Hmm.
from my family. And I had some sadness about leaving my family for those 4 days. And I think I even verbalized that when I got to
Yes.
the BRAVE-cation, that I was just feeling some sadness. So the nervousness didn't really come until the day that I was supposed to go.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm glad that you said that because I think so many people will be able to relate to that. If you could go back to that version of you a month ago and have a conversation with her, what would you say, to her, like to calm the nerves?
I would say it's normal to feel nervous about going into this environment and situation, and you've worked really hard to get to this place where you could take this time to really focus on your journey and to stay present with those feelings um, while you're packing up and getting ready to go. That it's okay to feel that way, but the outcome is the impact is going to really um, be everything that you want it to be.
I love that. Like the validation and then like, don't you worry. It's going to be exactly what you want it to be. Okay.
Yes, yes.
So like overall, and this could be as detailed as you want or not detailed, whatever feels comfortable for you. What did you think about the retreat now that you've, stepped away and had time to
Yes.
reflect?
So, like I said, I had no idea what to expect. I've never been to anything like this. As a mom of four, I've never really made a lot of space for myself to take this specific time for my healing journey. I also don't think that I was ready to make space for this type of healing until, I decided to do this. But as part of our pre work, you asked us to write an intention to help guide the experience. So I would love to just read my intention if that's okay
Yeah,
with you. So,
absolutely.
my intention for the retreat was to come back to myself, to give myself permission to focus on my healing without distraction, fear of judgment, and openness. I've focused a lot on self acceptance over the last 6 months, and I want to walk away with the creativity and self confidence that 8-year-old me had before external forces molded me into what everyone else wanted me to be. I know it will be hard work, and I know it will be worth it. And so, by taking the time, and I'm really glad that you had us write these intentions ahead of time, because I was just saying, I'm open to whatever. I
Yeah.
don't really have a plan. And you're like, I really think we need to set some kind of intention for this.
Yeah.
So by doing that ahead of time, my body and my brain knew the work. I did it like I couldn't aware of exactly what that looked like, but my body and my brain knew the work that I needed to do to get to where I wanted to be at the end. And I think the retreat is possibly one of the most beautiful and empowering experiences that I've ever had in my life. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. The first one, I just want to take a second to tell you how I was so just in awe of how you knew exactly how to respond to each one of us. We each had a need that hadn't been met, and you
Mhm.
knew exactly how to respond to us. And so it almost felt as if there was some kind of higher power that was moving through you to
Mhm.
give each one of us what we needed in some of our most, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it,
Thank
in some
you.
of our most difficult and vulnerable
Yeah.
moments.
Yeah.
You coaxed us to have breakthroughs. You gave us permission to be ourselves, to drop whatever the armor was that we had, and showed us how to look inside of ourselves for the answers we already knew, but we hadn't been able to verbalize yet. And so, as I have come through the last month since I've been there, experienced this, it has made me feel so much stronger in my own power. And it's empowered me to do things that I was afraid of before.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Okay. For those listening, you wouldn't know, but I started crying when Jen was saying all of that. Thank you so much. And then that last sentence that you just said, like, can you repeat that last sentence?
Yeah. So by allowing us to be ourselves, you were able to show us how to look inside for the
Yeah.
answers we already knew, but we
Yes.
hadn't yet been able to verbalize.
Yes. 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 The answers are within you, and it can feel difficult to get to it when there's not safety created to let the armor down, which is I was going to say goal, but not my goal. What I create at BRAVE-cation is that safety so
Yes.
that everyone can. Now, obviously it's each person's choice, but let that armor down. And I'm just going to chime in here. Just everyone at this particular retreat went there. They showed up. You showed up. You allowed yourself to be seen, and all the women around you as well. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever witnessed in my life.
I, yes. Yes, it was so beautiful, so empowering, so impactful just to hear everyone's stories and their ability. Because of the environment that you created, we all felt that there was safety to be our truest, most authentic selves, and to have that openness to look within ourselves and find some of the answers that we've been looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to say there? I don't know if I interrupted your thought process.
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. So I'm curious because I haven't asked you yet. Did you have a favorite part if you reflect back?
I actually have three things
Okay.
that have really stuck out for me. Um, the the first one and the most at the surface is I going into this, like I said, I didn't know really anyone in person, or I'd never met anyone in person with the exception of you. I'd met you in person, but I hadn't met anyone else in person. And I know that was the experience for a few of the other first time attendees. And so I really loved just how quickly we were all able to form relationships with each other. And that lended itself to the levels of openness and vulnerability that everyone was able to demonstrate throughout our time together. But just being able to go there with each other, it seemed almost like from the first evening, we were really able to just dig in and drop the armor with each other and create these friendships. I still talk to several people that I met there. I
Yeah.
text with them and talk with them regularly, if not daily, at least weekly. We're all
I'm
still
so happy to
talking to
hear
each other.
that. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah, so it was something I was personally craving because I relocated to Florida in about three years ago, or I relocated here 3 years ago, and I don't, it's hard to make friends as a grown up.
It really is. I am with you.
So just having the opportunity to be with people who were like-minded and, on similar journeys that I am on, it just opened itself up to develop a lot of those friendships.
Yes.
The next moment is probably the one of the top two, just experiences that I've had on my anxiety journey. And so there was a moment for me on the third day where I could not stop crying.
Yeah.
I literally couldn't stop crying, and it was giving me an enormous headache, and I had tried to lay down and take a nap, but I was not. Every time I laid down, like, my mind just couldn't stop
Yeah.
processing everything that was coming up in my body. And so I came out of my bedroom, and you were there, and you were like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I cannot stop crying." And you asked, "Could you give me a hug?" And I said, "Yes." And so you are hugging me. And then you said, "Do you want to, have me come and lay there with you?" And you went in there with me and talked to me like I needed to be
Yeah.
talked to when I was a little girl, and
Mm.
told me that it was okay. I'm going to get emotional now
It's
thinking about
okay.
it.
Let it out.
That it was okay to cry,
Yeah.
that this wasn't bad, that I
No.
wasn't bad for crying, because that was something that was ingrained in me growing up,
Yeah.
to not release those emotions. And the time that you spent with me to feel through all of the emotions that had come up over the previous, 2.5 days,
Yeah.
is something that I am so incredibly grateful for. And I've never experienced someone who gave me that level of empathy and understanding and no judgment whatsoever within that moment. It
Yeah.
was, release this. Like, your body is trying to release what it doesn't need anymore. And
Yes.
I'd never heard, I think you've said that before, but it never really resonated with me until I couldn't stop the emotions from coming out. Like, they just wanted to be
They want it out.
released from my body. And so it didn't take very long for me to move through those emotions just with you, very softly telling me that it was okay. And
Yeah.
probably similar. I know you've talked about having this experience with your daughters, probably very similar to, how you treat them when they have these emotions come up, big emotions come up like this.
Yeah.
And when I was finally able to fall asleep later and take a nap, and when I woke up, I felt like I was newborn baby. Like, I know it just
Yes.
sounds ridiculous, but
No, it's after the release. It makes sense.
I felt reborn, and my little girl self came to me in those moments and, took my hand and told me that we were going to be okay and
Yeah.
that she was going to be there with me. And it led to a sense of I'm not alone and I have the power to do what I want to do, whatever that
Yeah.
choice is.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I didn't
Yes, it was.
anticipate you sharing that, but of course, I'm crying. I was. I It's exactly the way that I sit with the girls, just like you said. And I know how important it is because I didn't have that. Like, it wasn't okay to express emotions. My
Yeah.
emotions were very, very often cut off. And I've talked about this, here and on Instagram. And in this moment, I can't remember how much I've talked about it on the podcast, but um, it was in hindsight, I didn't know this at the time, but in hindsight, it was a large reason why I felt, or maybe the entire reason why I felt broken, because I'm like, why can't I not have these emotions that I'm not supposed to have? And
Yes.
it's never supposed to be like that. We are emotional beings and we're supposed to feel all of it. And just like you said, when you were in the presence, when you were with me and I showed you I'm not afraid of it, that gives like the empathy and the strength that is needed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And permission.
And
I
permission.
never had permission to feel the emotions. It's always been looked down. I've experienced for me that I was weak if I
Yeah.
demonstrated those kinds of emotions because I am a deeply feeling person.
Hmm.
And if I'm happy, I'm crying. If I'm laughing, I'm crying. If I'm
Yeah.
sad, I'm crying. If I'm mad, I'm crying.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I've had to learn over time to put a lid on that because it wasn't what people wanted me, how people wanted me to show up. And so in that moment, when you gave me that permission and told me that it wasn't bad
Yeah.
and that you weren't afraid to sit with me through it, it
Yes.
it's really been a rebirth for me in
Thank
my
you.
day in my day to day.
In your day to day. Thank you for your courage and sharing that too. I know that, like, for many people, I know you are courageous and being open in that way, but for a lot of people that might have felt too vulnerable to share and to say out loud. So I really appreciate that because I know someone who's listening needs to hear that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to share one more thing that is my favorite part if we have time.
Yeah, we do.
The last thing that was my favorite and that I almost want a recording of it so that I can do it whenever I want to is when we did the fear imagery on the last day.
Yeah.
It was so powerful to go through that exercise. And I think you talked about it with Megan as well.
Hmm.
For me, I'd never thought about fear in that way.
Yeah.
And being able to visualize myself touching and seeing and feeling what that fear felt like once I breathed it out of my body and it was all around me.
Yeah.
I just never thought of it in that way. And so in that moment, when we were to walk through the fear, my little girl self in the visualization came to me and held my hand and we walked through it together. And so it was such a powerful way to encapsulate all the work that I'd done up until that point. because
Mhm.
my intention, if you remember, was to go back to the creativity and
Yes.
self-confidence that she had, and
Yes.
for her to be there with me was such a huge impact. So I loved that. I like want that on like my daily, like I need to listen to that on the daily
Maybe we can
to
hook
meet
you
the
up.
fear. Yeah, just Dr. Stuff's calm voice taking me through feeling my fear.
Yes.
I loved it.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing that. Um, is there anything else that you want to share about your takeaways or breakthroughs or anything?
So I have a few takeaways that have stuck with me since I, just it was difficult for me to transition from my experience at the retreat back into the real world.
Yeah.
And so the things that are really staying with me are, and I've said this a couple of times, but the feelings aren't going to go away until we learn the lesson. And I know I've said this to you a couple of times just about
Yeah.
my own experience in the last, month as I'm peeling back the next layer of my own journey's
Mm.
onion, and just understanding that I'm going to continue to feel whatever it is until I allow myself to learn the lesson that I'm asking for. It's the lesson I'm asking for. And
Yes.
and that's a huge breakthrough for me to understand that it's what I'm asking the universe to show to me, and it continues to show up until I take the time to learn the lesson.
Mhm.
The other things that I've learned is that I'm not alone. There were all of these other women who are having other experiences, but at the heart of it, all of them are very similar. Even though they're
Yes.
different, there are a lot of similarities to our anxiety and depression and just all the different journeys that we're on, and that I'm not alone in going through that. And it's been so it's almost a relief to know that.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
relief in that I'm not the only person that's going through this, that I'm not alone, and that I also have resources that I can reach out to, like I said, I'm still in contact and talk to many of the individuals. And so just having, additional people who I know that I can count on and that I can be in a safe space with to talk about
Yeah.
whatever I need to.
I love that you said that because one of my friends, she is a business owner. She says alone is a lie. That's like her a slogan for lack of a better word. And
Yeah.
she's so right. And I don't know that I have ever had a client that has not felt that. Like, oh my gosh, like I thought nobody else was struggling with this. And
Mhm.
every time I hear that, I so badly want more and more maybe not everyone, but for more people to show up with openness and vulnerability. Because when I witness it in others, and I'm sure that this is true for you too, it's like, oh my gosh, like this is like, I value it so much. It's so courageous and admirable and inspiring. But then yet, even the person who's like, let's say, I'll just use myself. If I'm saying that, but then sometimes like not showing up with vulnerability and in return, or not going first, and then it leaves us feeling like we're alone. But when
Yeah.
in reality, if I just go first more often than I might think, people will return that. And that's something that I intentionally do myself. I had a client one time she came to a 2-day, not a 4-day, but she's like, I just kind of thought you were going to be at the front of the room, like expert mode and, like this, and like teaching us things. And she's like, but you just showed up like real and raw. And shared things that I wouldn't have expected you to, because I do that because I want you all to know, like, me too. And
Yes.
this is the human experience, and we're not alone in it. It gives so much
Yes.
strength.
I think that's one of the things that I really love about you and the work that you are doing is that you aren't afraid to be open and vulnerable with us. And so it's such a I I love watching you do that because it's given me permission to do that as an HR professional. I've always been kind of an open book, but there's a difference between just sharing everything under the sun, but to be
Right.
really intentional about the level of vulnerability to create that connection with someone else so that then they don't feel like they're alone in whatever it is that they might be sharing with me or going through. I had someone yesterday say that very thing. Like, I'm so impressed in how open and vulnerable, and I so appreciate that you are able to have this conversation and share these things about you. And doing the work with you, Dr. Steph, is what has allowed me to show up in that way for the people that
Mm.
I work with every day.
Oh, I love that you just got that validation for yesterday about that, and
Yesterday. Yep.
that you are showing up in that way, because it can feel scary and it changes our experience of life.
Yes.
Yeah.
The only other takeaway that I wanted to share is one of the areas that I've really struggled in is thinking that I was good enough as a mom.
Mhm.
And I shared a lot about my mom journey, and in listening to all of the other women give feedback to me, I was able to realize that the love that I have for my children shines through in everything that I do,
It does.
even though I can't see it or touch it.
Yeah.
In the having that breakthrough, I left there knowing that I'm a good mom.
Yes, you are.
And that was a long time to get to that realization because there are a lot of experiences that I've had where there's been judgment over decisions that I've made for my children that maybe those individuals didn't necessarily agree with,
Yeah.
and I internalized that as, well, then that means
Mm.
I'm not a good mom. And
Mm.
so in the more healing that I do, the
Yeah.
more my children around me are healing, and the more
Yes.
confident I am in the decisions that I have made for them and continue to make for them.
Yes. I couldn't agree with that more. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for
beautiful.
sharing that. Okay. Is there anything else that you want to share before we end today?
Um, I guess the last thing that I just want to share is if anyone is thinking about going to BRAVE-cation, but maybe they're not sure. Um, from my perspective, it can definitely feel scary, and it did feel scary to let my armor down and to be vulnerable, not only with women that I didn't know, but also being vulnerable with myself.
Yeah.
But the more that you allow yourself to focus on your own healing, or the more I allowed myself to focus on my own healing
Yes.
and be guided by Dr. Steph's lessons that she guides you through, the more you are that I was able to take with myself. So if
Yes.
you are scared by that, just know if you walk into it with that openness and are willing to be guided, then you're going to take a lot with you.
Hmm. And I don't know if I've ever said this part on the podcast before, but what I hear people say from time to time, and so I'm sure even more people are thinking it, is like, if I open Pandora's box, what will I find? And if that resonates with you listening today, what I want you to know is that there is an oxygen tank at the bottom. And the only thing that you find is love.
Yes.
Everything else is armor and self-protection and defense mechanisms and things that you have acquired since you were born that are not serving you well. And so I know while it's easy for me to say this because I have experienced it, but I just encourage you to trust and believe that this is true. It's the only thing that you will find is love.
I couldn't agree more. And my experience truly embodied that.
Thank you.
I walked away with not only the strength and the empowerment, but it was because of the love that was there.
Yes. Yes. I'm so glad that you came, and I'm so excited that you're coming again.
Yes.
Oh, I can't
Me
wait.
too.
And and I appreciate you for coming on
Thank you.
today and for being open and sharing vulnerably, you know, and for crying with me. I didn't
Yes.
anticipate that, but it was beautiful. And thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I loved it.
You're welcome. All right, everybody listening, keep an eye out for the next BRAVE-cation interview so that you can learn more about the January 2025 BRAVE-cation Healing Retreat. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.